Today's session and the panelists epitomizes all that Crack the Wellness Code stands for and promises to be an engaging session. And for that purpose, the format is even more interactive. As I ask questions, then we have this team of three remarkable endocrinologists from all across the country. We have Dr. Kim Nguyen from the Bay Area, from Kaiser Permanente. She's a senior physician at the Permanente Medical Group and is one of the leaders in managing the obesity epidemic in obesity and diabetes epidemic nationwide, as well as in Northern California. We have Dr. Soham Patel, who is triple certified in internal medicine, endocrinology, and lifestyle medicine. And he joins us from all the way from the southeastern part of the country, from Tampa, Florida, where he runs his Center for Preventive Endocrinology and Nutrition. And his focus is on helping people manage, treat, and reverse diabetes and metabolic diseases using the power of food, the power of lifestyle. We have Timaree Hagenburger, who was a Bay Area native and has actually moved to Florida as well. She's a registered dietitian and nutritionist, and she has a master's degree in public health with over 20 years of experience as a nutrition professor. And those of you who attended our in-person sessions remember her lively and interactive sessions where she shows you how she walks the talk, and she helped us prepare delicious food and also taste them. And last but not the least, we have my dear friend, Dr. Sumit Bhagra, who joins us all the way from Minnesota. And he is at the Mayo Clinic, where he's an endocrinologist, a very well-reputed endocrinologist of national and global fame, with expertise in diabetes, thyroid disorders, pituitary and adrenal disorders, osteoporosis, and of course, obesity, which forms the bread and butter, no pun intended, of what endocrinologists do. And he also has other very significant roles at the Mayo Clinic, which we will hear about. And he's an active proponent of the Blue Zones lifestyle, which I'm very excited about. So without further ado, let's welcome our panelists. And we'll ask them to, there they are. Dr. Bhagra, welcome. Nguyen, good to see you. Dr. Soham Patel, welcome. And Timaree Hagenburger, good to see you. So in order to prevent everybody from talking all at the same time, maybe what I'll do is I'll ask a question and I'll direct it to one person, and then everybody else can chime in. And that way everybody will get to lead the discussion, at least for one question. And then we'll keep the channels open for the questions that are coming into the chat as well. And I might start with Dr. Nguyen, because I know she has small children. She joins us, and she has a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old who might come running into the screen, or if she has to go tend to them, let's get her started first. And it's just a very general question, and which a lot of people are curious about, as to what is the reason for this massive worldwide epidemic of metabolic diseases that we're seeing today. Is something changed in our genetics, or is it environment, or is it both? What's going on?
I think there's multiple, unfortunately, factors contributing to that. Probably foremost among those factors is increased consumption of just highly palatable, highly processed foods that are not actually nutrient dense and very calorically dense, and thereby leading to abnormal weight gain and increasing our risk of metabolic disease and obesity and diabetes and all the other comorbidities that we're seeing. I think other factors include environmental issues, such as lack of walkability in some of our communities. I think socioeconomic factors also are at play. There are certainly, at least in the US, areas of the country where there's marketing that's targeted towards certain populations of highly palatable but not nutritionally beneficial foods, which contributes to the metabolic syndrome and obesity epidemic. And then these same populations also just don't have the resources to access some of these whole food, more plant-forward way of cooking and eating that we really support and encourage among our patients. And genetics, of course, does play a role, but I think by and large, lifestyle and environmental factors are really driving a lot of this that we're seeing. But I welcome everyone else's thoughts too.
Yes.
Of course.
Timaree.
I think we've lost traction on a lot of the 6 pillars from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, where the nutrition is definitely a piece. Physical activity is a piece that has changed quite a bit. A lot of time stresses. Everybody's feeling that, if it's a 2-minute workout, maybe, but they're not incorporating the natural physical activity that maybe was part of their life before. Sleep is another one of the pillars. Relationships have changed significantly just in the past few years. You hear all kinds of studies where people have fewer and fewer really important contacts, and that contributes to mental health. And then those risky substances, we're seeing more and more of that. So it's a multi-prong, as Dr. Nguyen said, and it's just it takes time for all of those to set in and really show themselves. And now we're getting into almost the second generation of that. And we're going to see some side effects in my experience, my students, so my college students' parents were definitely one of the first generation who had no contact with cooking. They had completely convenience food, where at least their grandparents spent time in the kitchen. But the closer we get to the generations where they don't even connect with their food, that's a problem.
Yeah, Dr. Patel, you might need to hit on it.
Yeah, so as Dr. Nguyen and Timaree mentioned, it's a multifactorial situation we are dealing with here with the diabetes and obesity, epidemic or pandemic, actually, because it's worldwide. Metabolic disease is not localized to one country; it's worldwide now. But as Timaree mentioned, the different aspects, the thing that is not focused a lot or not emphasized as much, stress, the white elephant. Chronic stress is what I'm meaning when I say stress. We need some kind of stress, otherwise we won't feel alive at all. But the chronic stressors and the way our body responds to those chronic stressors is what really determines a huge risk factor for metabolic disease. And the lost art of cooking, as Timaree mentioned, people don't know how to cook. That's a really lost art. And loneliness, that's another of this huge underlying factors I see all the time, at least in my clinical practice. Is unfortunately, there are some patients who come seeing me for their visit is the high social point for their life. If they don't have any other friends or family to socialize with. So huge factors, but multifactorial.
Dr. Vij, I would just add, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a great format and great to be with my colleagues here trying to enlighten. As you know, I'm from Minnesota, so it's about 8:30 here. And glad to be part of this group. Hope to do these again. You asked about genetics. Human genetics did not change in the last 20 or 30 years. And yet we see 18-year-olds and 30-year-olds developing diabetes. So something is going on. These are the very young, highly insulin-resistant people coming in with type 2 diabetes. And I think our food supply is getting tainted. What we eat is generally not food. We often ask our patients, how often do you eat out? But if you really look at the food consumed not out, but inside the house, that is also eating out because it's ready-made packaged, frozen, microwaved, and whatnot. So in a sense, people are eating 15 to 20 meals out, sort of in a restaurant, even though they're eating at home. And we need to sort of connect back to our roots and live how our ancestors used to live, perhaps. Enjoy the benefits of processing in terms of not getting infections from food, but not hyper-processing food, so we can maintain our health going forward.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think Soham mentioned that this is worldwide, and some of these things that you talk about instantly come to mind as though these are really first world problems of, fast food everywhere and restaurants and freely available calories, and even loneliness, social isolation, nuclear families. Whereas you traditionally would think of people in other parts of the world not having those same problems because they would live in communities, people are cooking at home, they're not as affluent, and therefore should be eating closer to the ground, closer to the food that they perhaps grew or were able to procure locally. So it's still intriguing how this would suddenly become this global pandemic, as Soham said. Any thoughts on that?
So I can talk about the Indian situation and the Middle Eastern situation and every other country that went from being undernourished. We see pictures from 40 years ago, even family pictures, hardly anybody had central adiposity. Mm-hmm. I don't like to use the word obese because of negative connotations attached to it, but it's really having adipose tissue in the wrong places, which tends to get inflamed and cause the syndrome of inflammation, which leads to diabetes and heart disease and early death. So part of it is affluence, of course. There's the rural-urban divide. And yet in the Indian setting, we know that rural communities are not spared the brunt of diabetes. There's probably at least one diabetes patient undiagnosed for every one that we know about. So between the undiagnosed and diagnosed diabetes, I see a world where 25% of our adults may have diabetes in the very near future. Another sobering statistic is that every child born today has about a 30 to 40% chance of becoming diabetic in their lifetime. So this is the world we're living in, and hence we see all these weight loss medications become the panacea for this. And yet the solutions are not magic bullet injections or tablets. It's really going back to the basics to go upstream. It's often said, if you see so many people drowning, you can take them out of the stream. But the question is, why are they falling in the river in the first place? So we need to go upstream and figure out the basics behind it.
It looks like there's silence after that very sobering commentary, Dr. Bhagra. But when you go to obesity meetings, there's all this research. Still, I'm going to go back to the genetics question only because when I say it's all your lifestyle and what you're putting in your mouth, the pushback that I get is, no, I eat really healthy. I walk 10,000 steps a day. This has to be genetic. And there is some research in looking at perhaps genetic markers that weren't known in the past, or there's something else that's going on that we don't realize, or could the change in the environment and the foods that we're eating, or the non-foods as you would call them, we're putting in our mouths, perhaps turning on some genetic signals that are making us sicker?
So again, if I may monopolize the conversation, I mean, we all have genes that make us better storers of fat because they were survival friendly back then when we had no food. The human body was not designed for continuous availability of food 24/7, 12 months a year for, 70, 80, 90 years. So we don't have the cycle of feast and famine that our ancestors grew up in. And those that had the genes that were perhaps more conserving of calories got passed along, and probably 30, 40, 50% people carry them. But the environment makes those genes blossom. So genes kind of load the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So that's how I see it.
And I think Timaree alluded to it too, but I think there is overall just a decrease in level of activity in general throughout, regardless of where we are. I think modern conveniences being what they are, we just don't walk as much as we do. We don't move as much as we should. We're just very sedentary. It's an increasingly sedentary society, and that is just not health promoting in any way, whether that comes from a metabolic standpoint or even just stress release standpoint. There's so much healing that can come from engaging in activity throughout the day, which then contributes to better sleep, which then also fosters opportunities for connection. So just like Timaree said, all these little pillars of health and wellness that we know are so integral have been eroded away by the way society has evolved. So I completely agree, with what's been said. I think there may be a genetic predisposition, but it's really the environmental stressors that have triggered this epidemic, as we're calling it appropriately.
And something that is scary, even thinking about what's happened in the past several years, is that, and I spend time every day talking to clients about this because I see children, moms, and babies. Right now, I'm working as a senior public health nutritionist for the state of Florida. And it's amazing how they know that the foods like the French fries and the hot dogs and all these foods are not healthy. Yet and they feel uncomfortable talking to me about it and kind of admitting. And so they'll say, well, but it's only for a treat. And I said, okay, well, how often does that happen? Oh, not every day, only like 3 or 4 times a week, or not every day, everything, but yeah, at least one of those every day. And I start to say, well, isn't that interesting? What we call a treat, what we have to be so good for to get to this treat is actually something that hurts our body. I said, what kind of a treat is that? But the issue is that it isn't the occasional on your birthday once a year. It's anybody's birthday around you, anybody's birthday at work, anybody's birthday at school is an excuse or an opportunity to indulge in behaviors that hurt our bodies. And that consistency is what does the damage. And it's just so prevalent now. It's just everywhere. And with the pandemic, a lot of parents were under a lot of stress. All of a sudden, they had to have their kids at home. They were homeschooling, where they were really not homeschooling, but they were just having to take care of everyone at home. And so the treats became even more prevalent because they felt like the kids couldn't go outside. They couldn't play with their friends. They weren't in school. And so I'm worried about even now this generation who was in elementary school during this time that learned that and demanded treats as a way of coping when they were bored and they were anxious or what have you. So I wish that I could say that the future on the same path is positive, but we have to turn this ship around because if not, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
In line with what Timaree just mentioned, if I give my own personal experience growing up in India, and especially specifically in Gujarat, only on special occasions you would get access to a treat. So treat for me growing up was the Fanta. Fanta is a soda version, quite popular back then. But you only got it if you did great in some exam or it was your birthday, things like that. A few times a year, you didn't have that all the time, 24/7. And now we have access to those type of ultra processed, palatable but nutrient sparse foods that are devoid of the biggest nutrient that we need, which is fiber. No fiber at all because it has to have a shelf life, right? So that's one aspect that has become omnipresent. But the other aspect that actually combines genetics with the lifestyle is the bridge of epigenetics. And you have moms who are pregnant or are trying to conceive who are following a lifestyle which is, again, imprinting or putting their children in utero and later in life at a higher risk of metabolic disease, which is, again, exploding as we speak.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the other link, Dr. Vij, that Dr. Soham Patel mentioned the fiber, and the link with the fiber is the microbiome. I think that's the other organism that we didn't create, but that lives inside of us. I think it's trillions of bacteria that live inside us. As we consume fast food, and that link is known to most people in the field, but maybe not to the layperson, is that the microbiome predicts your colonic health, which then creates the mucus layer, which then protects you against some of the gram-negative lipopolysaccharide type things that drive inflammation, that drive diabetes, which drive heart problems. So feeding fiber and less palatable foods provides the fuel for the good bacteria to make the inner chamber more conducive to not allowing external toxins to come in. So obviously there's the mind. We'll talk about that. There is the epigenetic factors, the genetics, what we eat, but there's also the extra human influences that live inside us that often get neglected, but they probably play as important a role as the environment that we live in, because they reflect the environment that we live in today.
Thank you. Yeah, there were a couple of really good pearls in there that I want to reiterate. And again, we have 75 participants here. We see some questions coming into the chat. Please keep them coming. We have these audiences from all over the world. Some of these people might have diabetes. Some of them are looking at ways not to get sick. And really at Crack the Wellness Code, our goal is to provide actionable information, real quick takeaways that people can adopt in their lives. So with that in mind, there were a couple of things that stood out to me in the little conversation that I heard. One was about the fact that we're not in feast or famine, we're in feast or feast or feast. And it's a global phenomenon, whether you're in San Francisco or Rochester, Minnesota, or Mumbai, India. So the question from that would be, there's a very popular idea of intermittent fasting right now where some people think of it as 16-8. They're eating for 8 hours and allowing the conveyor belt to clear out, so to speak, for the other 16 hours. And essentially, you're creating a little bit of a famine for part of the day, at least. Other more strict biochemistry, science type people claim that you don't even go into ketosis until the third day. So you really have to be starving for 3 days to truly be in ketosis. And there's really contrasting results coming out. There's some people that really lose weight and do well on this. And there's other studies. There was a very large study that actually showed that there was not much benefit as compared to just calorie restriction. I'd love to hear from the experts on intermittent fasting, 16-8 versus, fasting, truly fasting for 3 to 5 days a month, and whether you guys think it's any benefit.
So, from my clinical aspect, one of the key focuses is how can we create sustainable lifestyle changes? Because if I do something, but I only do it once, it's essentially of not much benefit. And in that aspect, yes, in a purest sense, yes, you have to be fasting 72 hours to get the maximum benefit of the autophagy and, be in that pure state of ketosis. But doing a 72-hour fast requires a lot of planning and changing your schedule around it. So maybe you can do it one a quarter, or if you're really regimented, then maybe once a month. But on a sustained basis, what I find is people can easily do a 24-hour fast. I always tell people to, go from dinner one day to dinner next day and skip breakfast and lunch, for the day that they're fasting. And that is fairly easy to inculcate on a weekly basis. And then on a daily basis, anything between 12 to 16 hours of intermittent fasting, but with the focus that you are not keeping that feeding window later at night. So 8 p.m. should be a hard stop. If your schedule allows, maybe before 7, but if it doesn't, then 8 p.m. should be a hard stop for any more food intake, so that you at least have a couple hours, preferably 3 would be better, but at least a couple hours of no food. So by the time you fall asleep, your digestion process has been completed. As soon as you go into the deeper stages of sleep, the liver can start doing the detoxification that it needs to do and doesn't cut into that process.
And unless somebody else wants to speak, I can certainly say everything we know today will be proven wrong in the next 5 years, right? If you look back 5 years, what we thought was the right thing will change. I look back at the 1970s, heart attack management. We told people to bed rest for 1 month because their heart was in a precarious condition. They should not move. And now we put them on a cardiac rehab treadmill on day 2 or day 3 after a heart attack. So things change. And like Dr. Patel said, whatever is sustainable, oftentimes I have people who have no insight into what they're doing and why they're doing it. I just tell them simple concepts of the 4 S's, which is cut back your sugar, Do not eat snacks in between meals just because you're bored. Watch the serving size. And as a rule, don't go for seconds. One plate full, and a smaller plates, probably smaller utensils as well. Eat slower might be the fifth S. And sleep tight. And if there was another S, which said social connection, those are probably the 6 or 7 S's. And that's a start. You can't have a person who's doing everything wrong and suddenly go to an 18, 6, or 24 fast. It's just not sustainable.
I just know that if I go to Costco and I haven't eaten, I want to eat all the samples and go back multiple times. So I wonder if fasting might promote more cravings for junk food when it does become suddenly available. And I've heard this other idea that maybe eating little bits of food and keeping the gas tank half full keeps cravings and everything at bay. So that's what my question was about.
The research that I have seen does not support actually, as Dr. Bhagra had said, that what we learned in the past, you would hear about small meals throughout the day. But the research really is very supportive of the no snacks, that you do give your body rest in between those meals. And I think mentally that's also helpful because it puts some easy boundaries, because I think that if you take every opportunity that you could eat to make a decision as to whether you're gonna eat or not, you get into the decision fatigue. But if you know I'm eating now and then I'm not gonna eat until whatever time, then at least it gives you that freedom to be able to relax. And if someone offers you something and say, thank you so much, it's just, I'm not eating right now. I'm giving my GI tract a rest. I am protecting my microbiome, because that constant supply of food is very, very challenging on the gut microbiome, and especially as Dr. Patel said, later in the day. So we want earlier meals, but that kind of flies in the face of the typical diet where you're counting points and you're trying to wait as long as possible to eat. And then, you have this big meal, and then later in the day, you just keep snacking because you can't get that satiety. So flipping things around and going back to the good advice of breakfast like a king, right? Lunch like a prince and dinner like a pauper. That seems to be much more in line with our gut and just human physiology, even to the point where they've done studies where they've put people in rooms where they didn't know if it was night or day. They tried to trick their body into not knowing, the sun is out or the sun is not out. And still they saw people, their bodies knew if it was the morning or the night. And that's why shift work has now been considered a risk for health beyond just driving at night or whatever. It actually metabolically is risky to eat at night and to work at night and then not sleep at night. So there's a lot. And the other piece of the fasting is that we've just gotten so far away from being in touch with our body. Are we even hungry? Or is it the fact that you saw a commercial or you walked by the counter, the break room at work, and there was all of this food out there? Is that the trigger, or does your body actually need fuel? And so the further we get away from that and the more trendy it becomes to, I'm fasting, it's just short-lived and disappointing, because then it's going to be something else. People said, I tried that and it doesn't work. And so we don't want to do that either. Sustainable is what we want.
And a lot of the fasters that I talk to, Timaree, are skipping breakfast and they're eating lunch like a pauper and then just eating a huge dinner like a king that goes into the night. And I'm sure that's not the intent.
So if I may add, I do find patients who are not hungry in the morning. So although, it's great if you are that kind of person who likes to eat breakfast, then yes, go for it and have a, big, wholesome, fiber-rich, nutrient-dense breakfast. But if you're not someone who likes to eat that early in the morning, what I tell people is, whichever is your first meal, whether it's 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. or noon, should be, again, a nutrient-dense, fiber-rich meal so that you get the good fuel to start, jumpstart the metabolism, and not start slow and then end up with a big meal in the evening. And then, because you're kind of starving yourself from the day, your cravings still kicking, and then you're snacking after even that big meal. So satiety is important. Fasting helps, but if you are not eating the right foods when you do eat, then it's going to be challenging to fast. And also you're not getting the benefit of fasting because you are always running in a stress mode that, and you're always stressed with making decisions about food. You're always trying to control, and that chronic negative, aspect of I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, eventually bears on your psyche.
Yeah, I think speaking to that, like sustainable eating patterns is really, really fundamental to being able to adhere to a diet. And I completely agree with what has been said before. I think, meal composition is also equally important. And when we think about what we're eating and what we're eating mindfully, which I think is also important, we need to be in touch with our satiety cues and like what's the motivation to eat? Is it because we actually really are hungry, or is it just because socially the situation dictates it, or are we bored or stressed? There's a lot of stress eating that's happening, especially with everything that's going on. So then I think when we do decide to eat, it's also important to think about the composition of the meal and the sequence of the foods that you eat, because that also impacts how rapidly your blood sugars spike, which then can also affect your satiety and hunger. So that's as important too. I don't know that I advocate for intermittent fasting for all of my patients. For some people, they're just not hungry in the mornings, so it works better for them to eat later. But like Dr. Patel said, then we need to just maximize the nutrient value of that first meal. And in general, I do, like all these others have said, eating lighter towards the end of the day when we're not as active, when we're about ready to go to sleep and we're not going to be utilizing those calories is, I think, useful advice and helpful for sleep quality too, actually.
A couple of interesting observations and studies. They did a study on doctors who had been on night shift work. So when they came in, video cameras installed in the call room, the person who normally eats healthy, when they do a night shift, they generally pick up the donut. It was, fed fruits and donuts kept side by side, and they looked at the person in scrubs, always picking up the bad food. And secondly, when you eat hyperpalatable food, your perceived satiety is not high at the end of the meal. In fact, you eat faster and faster and faster. In general, if you slow down the pace of eating with any meal, it generally means the body is saying, it's enough, don't eat so much. So if you typically look at a 7-8-year-old eating French fries or chocolate, they'll pick up the pace as they pick it up. They'll pick up 1 fry, then 2, then 5, and they want more. And they don't do that with, say, apples or, other foods that are generally healthy. So the body somehow senses the nutritive value of that food, but does not for the heavily processed food. That's my personal observation.
So you're saying that the highly processed food, because we haven't evolved around that, is sort of flying under the satiety radar, and we're not even picking up that we've had, 3-5 glasses of orange juice. But if we're eating oranges, we couldn't consume that many oranges because our body knows how to process and recognizes that.
Well, and
we have the rheology. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
I think it's also the rheology of the food. Like there have been studies too looking at the density of the liquids of the foods that you consume. And if it's a thinner liquid like juice, the body doesn't register that as satiety. You don't feel full, and you can just keep drinking astronomical amounts and consuming, far in excess of the calories that you need. Whereas a thicker, more fiber-rich liquid would be more filling, and you actually stop. So I think fiber is a big component of satiety. Unfortunately, a lot of these ultra-processed foods just are severely lacking in any sort of fiber or any satiety-promoting nutrients. And if anything, they spike your sugar incredibly high, which then leads to this roller coaster, and that rapid rise and drop in sugar then triggers hunger and just this lack of satiety feeling.
There's excellent research about people consuming a similar weight of food every day. So when you have ad libitum, so you can eat whatever you'd like, most people will consume about the same weight in food. So that calorie density makes all the difference because we have the stretch receptors in our GI tract. So we know if you've put in one little potato chip, and there's actually a term now, it's called disappearing calories, because you basically don't even need to chew. It just disintegrates. So when you think of these cheese puffs and these puffed grain, highly processed foods that basically just melt when they hit the mouth, there is no triggering of, whoa, I just filled my stomach. And we see that with whole fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes, they take up space. And that consistently gives messages from our nervous system to our brain saying, we have food, slow down. The emergency, it ceases. Don't worry. But when we pour in meat or dairy, and the worst offender is oil because it is the most calorie dense. So when we look at 100 calories of green leafy vegetables, a whole pound can be consumed. But when we talk about oil, we're talking about now, instead of a calorie density of 100 per pound, we're talking 4,000 per pound. 4,000 calories per pound. So dripping in a little oil is going to not take up any space in the stomach. No stretch receptors. However, the calories are going to be on board, and it's going to take very little breakdown for that to move from your lips, as people say, to your hips. And that visceral fat is really, really damaging. So this is extremely important to discuss, because people need to realize that if they're not eating foods that are not only nutrient dense, but another piece I like to add is fluid dense, water dense, because water has 0 calories. So when we're eating a lot of foods that are dry, they have no water content, they are going to be highly caloric compared to water-rich foods that will also take up space. And that fiber holds the water, so it contributes as well to the fullness and reduces the speed at which the glucose is absorbed into our bloodstream.
And Pankaj, I would only add that food companies, without naming any brands, employ a lot of, they have functional MRI units, they have large units that look at how much people want to consume their food and how fast they consume it, because it makes sense to maximize unit sales. Your local farmer does not have an MRI machine or a psychologist studying the effects of food on you. The mouth feel of what the chocolate feels like or what the chip feels like, how it breaks and how the sound it makes, it's all engineered for perfection, so that there's a dopamine effect to that as well. There's a pleasure associated with it, which is much like gambling or, sugar or other types of addiction. And that certainly plays a role as well.
It's like you can never have one chip, right? If you look at a bag of chips, which is an example of ultra processed but highly palatable food, it will have the serving size will be maybe 28 grams or whatever. And that bag has more than one serving, but you can never stop at one serving because you are hitting the dopamine release from the texture, from the sweetness, from the spiciness, from the saltiness. You're having multiple different aspects, like they have been specially designed and studied by psychologists and functional and MRI studies to find out what's that sweet spot that triggers so many multiple levels of pleasure in your brain, and that's where you keep going back for that over and over again and cannot stop yourself. And something else that Dr. Bhagra mentioned earlier in his observation is, the call situation, and you have fruits versus something like a processed donut. And after a call, even if you may be eating healthy otherwise, but after that call, you're going to go for the donut. And that's good old physiology of cortisol release in play. Cortisol is a stress hormone, but also a survival hormone. is going to make you go for comfort foods that are high in calorie and create that energy positive situation for your body. So if you are in a stressful situation, I think taking a few moments and take a walk into some other environment outside, or maybe take some deep breaths and then go on to choosing your food may probably make you have better choices than going from that high stress situation to directly food, because even if you have a healthy option there, you're likely not going to pick that.
Thank you. This is such an enlightening conversation, and I'm just delighted that our audience gets to hear from four of the most brilliant minds in the world about topics that are so important. Thank you again, Dr. Bhagra, Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Patel, and Timaree Hagenburger. I have a couple more questions before we go to our audience questions, which I hope Sachin and Shailaja can help me sort of tabulate those. But I'm having these bulbs going on in my head of questions that I'm sure the audience would have too. So if I may, I want to pick your brains a little bit more before we go to the audience questions. The one that came to my mind as Sumit was talking about gut microbiome was this idea of diet foods, diet Coke, diet Pepsi, diet cookies, desserts, and people consume these low caloric or zero caloric sweetened foods, thinking that it's all about calories in, calories out. What is the effect of whatever artificial sweeteners are being added? And could they be actually making people sicker because of their effect on gut microbiome?
I defer to Dr. Bhagra's expertise, of course, but in general, with artificial sweeteners, I think they actually adversely affect our gut microbiome and are not necessarily health promoting. In the past, we kind of used them as a crux to at least get patients away from drinking full sodas. It was at least thought that it was at least better that they did that than consume, the 16 tablespoons of sugar that is in one small soda. But I think what we've now determined is that they actually adversely affect our microbiome there and alter. They can have metabolic implications too in terms of causing insulin resistance. So it's actually, I think and it's also misleading to the palate. It kind of builds this craving for this intense sweetness that is not actually normal at all in terms of, what normal whole foods taste like. And so it just feeds those reward centers that dopamine loop in the brain to kind of constantly crave these highly palatable, really sweetened foods. So in general, I think there needs to be a walk away from those and more towards, seeing treats in a different light, doing a dessert flip, for example, where oftentimes like with desserts, what's most rewarding is the first 1 or 2 bites. So you can do the 3-bite rule, 1 bite to taste, 1 bite to enjoy, 1 bite to say goodbye. And then the rest of your plate should be fiber-filled, nutrient-dense, sustained fruits. There's so much more enjoyability and color that comes from building a plate that way. And I think in general, it would do us well to retrain our palates to really appreciate the natural, sweetness and richness that nature already offers in the forms of unadulterated fruits, actually.
I
would add before Dr. Bhagra comments is I tell my patients 0 calories does not mean 0 harm. To break down all the science and get them to understand 0 calories does not mean 0 harm.
I like that answer. 1 minute answers. Moving on. Timaree.
Quick, just to add to what Dr. Nguyen was mentioning, that even if you feel like you never get there to where this whole food, plant-based nourishment would taste good, it does. It's amazing. When you do retrain, you may think, I'll never get used to not drinking soda or eating this way. Your body will truly crave it. You just have to give it a chance. And it does. It really works. I'll be quiet.
And my comment is, I think science does a very bad job at explaining the findings. We have very simplistic answers. If you do this, it's good for you or bad for you. The body is very complex. We thought sucralose, Splenda, is possibly good for you. goes to the microbiome, changes it, causes inflammation, etc. I think the only artificial sweetener perhaps standing is stevia. Even stevia has erythritol mixed into it. Stevia does not contain erythritol, but most brands have erythritol for sweetness, which causes platelet aggregation. So it's an emerging field. It is better not to have the sweet taste touch your tongue for now. And if you really want it, maybe choose the safest option available so far. And even that might change in the next year or two. We might find that even that's not safe. So that's all I have, Pankaj.
Excellent. Okay, moving forward. 1 minute answers. Which diet do you think would be best for preventing pre-diabetes from going into diabetes, or if you have diabetes, to prevent complications? We've heard about low-carb diet because carbs are the enemy. We've heard about vegan diets. Mediterranean diet is eaten in the parts of the world which are blue zones, where people live a long time, and maybe the olive oil or other fats in the diet keep us full and enhance satiety. How does a common man figure this out? 1 minute answer.
I want to answer. Whole food, plant exclusive. If you are given a diagnosis of prediabetes, you take it as diabetes. You don't mess around. You don't waste time. And you fill your plate with the most nutrient-dense, least processed plant foods. We have research that shows with every bit of animal products that are added, you increase your risk of diabetes at different ages. And it can be as significant as 10 times more when you're over 65 by contributing a significant portion of your protein load from animals. There's lots of reasons why, but it really works to shift away and to fill your plate with the antioxidant-rich, nutrient-dense, fiber-rich, and phytonutrient-rich plants.
Anybody else?
No, I mean, that's the comprehensive answer. We should have buzzers here, just take it and quickly answer.
So, Dr. Vij, we have 22 questions by now, and we hope there are more coming in. So this is really interactive. So thanks everybody for putting those questions. There are a couple of questions which have come in the chat box. They might just be inserted in the Q&A box so that we don't miss you, please. And the other thing that we want to do is we have health heroes. Some of them have also posed questions. So we might like to hear from them, because one of the things that we do in Crack the Wellness Code is also to work with health heroes who have either reversed or done something fabulous for others in the community to get inspired. So we might like to give them a few seconds about 90 seconds to talk about. So that's something that we could do along with the question answers, Dr. Vij.
A couple more questions in the buzzer round, and our panelists are promising fast answers. They're not going to go on and on. What's the consensus on supplements? And in fact, this is in the chat also. There's a question about fish oil. So what's the consensus post-vital study of vitamin D, fish oil, good, bad, as far as metabolic health goes? Is there any benefit?
I can take that from a simplistic perspective. In general, any supplements that you read are in vitro studies, meaning small studies, sometimes done on cells or animals. They may have a modest effect, but that effect is outshined by the lifestyle choices we are discussing here. So if you're looking for the fountain of youth or health in a bottle or something you buy online, you're looking in the wrong places. That's sort of my basic answer to drive the point home that people come in with these selenium or antioxidants or multivitamins bought for $20, expensive bottle. Those are just fancy marketing things. Vitamin D might have some immunomodulatory things in type 1 as well as type 2 diabetes. But overall, the effect is very small. Eliminating some of the major offenders will have an effect that is many times more than taking a supplement from the store. Any dissenters in the panel?
Not a dissent, but what I would kind of segue is the one thing that I do suggest. And yes, in the terms of the percentage effect of a supplement in terms of metabolic benefit, vitamin D may have some, but still less. But it has you have tremendous benefit in terms of overall immune improvements, mental clarity, overall energy, and muscle and joint health. So I do definitely recommend vitamin D with vitamin K supplementation for along with metabolic health, because it's we call it a vitamin, but it's actually a pro-hormone because it's needed for thyroid and all other different sex hormone production as well. So vitamin D with K is my, and then the B12 is my usual suggestions. But I agree that yes, if you are not addressing the lifestyle answers, and you expect a chromium picolate or a cinnamon supplement, or for that matter a berberine or whatever the latest thing on the market, that by itself is not going to fix your metabolic health. There is no debate there. So you got to work on the lifestyle choices, but with that, I think vitamin D, K, and B12.
And as Timaree mentioned, a whole food diet will actually get you all that delivered to your body, move in the right direction, the blood levels go up. Some people with diabetes have low vitamin D levels because of adiposity. Fat tissue holds on to the vitamin D, their blood levels drop down. So it might be an epiphenomena where it appears to be low, but it's in the wrong places in the body too. So great discussion.
I'm very concerned about fish oil supplementation because of the contamination and the fact that we actually see some inflammation where we should see lowering of inflammation with the omega-3. So that is a concern. And I think we need to be aware of flaxseed and walnuts, not flax oil and not walnut oil, but flaxseed and walnuts, chia seeds. Those are going to be reasonable sources, and you don't need a whole bunch. But there's more details around that. But fish oil is very concerning.
Wonderful. Well, I have a lot of other questions about red wine, resveratrol, blue zones, Gundry diet. But I think in the interest of time, maybe we can hear from some of our health heroes. This is a global community. Again, it's a health promotion platform, and we are directly dealing with the public in helping spread the message of health and wellness to everybody that's part of our community. And a big pillar of that community is some of our health heroes who have their stories of how they have reversed disease and gained their own health back. So if we have anybody here, let's hear from a couple of our health heroes. So
yes, so Dr. Vij, what we are going to do is we'll invite Sandeep Sharma, who is the track leader of CWC diabetes, and he's also a health hero. So he'll got a little bit about his story, and he's also driving the support group for diabetes. So I just wanted him to tell you a little bit of the support group and so on. And then we can take up 28 questions that we have, because we probably have to carry home some questions and make sure that we have them answered. So over to you, Sandeep.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Soham. Thanks, Dr. Vij. Thanks, Dr. Patel, Bhagra, Dr. Nguyen. So first of all, I would really thank all the doctor panelists for talking things out in simple English that people like me can understand. What I grabbed really from this thing was lunch like a king, dinner like a pauper, lips to hips, 3-bite rule, taste, enjoy, and say bye. Such simple English, explaining things in such a simple English really helps people like me understand the overall concept of not only preventing, but also how to, take care of your diabetes. So thank you so much for explaining it to us in a simple English. Now, I would just like to take a quick poll from our attendees as to how many of you are joining it for the first time, any CWC event. Please raise your hands, reactions in the Zoom, and we'll take a look at it as to how many people have done that. Thank you so much. Now, another thing is, I'll talk about my story a little bit later, but highly encourage everybody to join in our support group. Coming to some of the, bites that I really captured is, it all boils down to the food that you are eating and the activities that we are doing. What I captured some of the notes while we were talking about is the processed food. That's something that we should look at avoiding. Also, physical activity matters a lot. Sleep, mental health, that's what I heard. I also heard that there is a healing from stress relieving. We talked a little bit about the intermittent fasting part of it. So what I liked is we should do something which is sustainable, not something like intermittent. Eat now, keep it consistent for whatever you're doing, and do not eat because you're bored. That's a very good one that I got it. So I also like, Dr. Vij's point on Costco sampling. That's something that, I also get tempted. You walk around and you see those small things and you keep on eating on those things. So those are some of the takeaways from our conversation. And just a quick reminder to everybody that the views expressed are of those of the individuals and not of the organizations that they represent. That was a disclaimer that we had shown earlier also, but I would just remind everybody of that. I think we have 29 questions. We can get into other things later on, but let's get on to the questions as soon as we can so that we are able to address those to our attendees and any over to Soham. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll pull the questions, 29 of them. So the first one comes from Rajiv Puranik. He's also very active in our support group. So Rajiv says, has there been any epidemic studies done about the impact of environmental factors on diabetes? Epidemic studies.
So in general, I would say that pollutants, etc., anything that causes oxidative stress and potentially DNA damage and DNA methylation leads to shortening of telomeres, early aging, early death, heart attacks in general. Of course, the environmental factors can act by increasing the adipose mass, by endoplasmic reticulum stress, or by changing how the genetic code that we were given acts inside our body. So again, using very simple terms, we could go on forever and talk about epigenetic modifications. But the way in which we may have inherited genes that were, say, defective to begin with, very high risk of diabetes, or we put them at risk by living in environments that are artificial or unnatural for our bodies. So yes, it exists and it happens, but all those mechanisms have not been elucidated. Even if we found it, I think it's not going to be a drug that fixes it. It's going to be, again, the principles we talked about. So going back to the basics. In the interest of time, I'll sort of shorten my answer to that. Thank you.
So the next one is from Naresh Narang, and he's talking about how can a pre-diabetic person lower their blood sugar level to not become diabetic?
The key is to start early. So anytime you recognize you are on a metabolic journey, you should take a pause, take an overview of how your lifestyle is and what are the factors that is putting you in a state of stress or choices that lead to more problems. But if you wait longer, you keep losing the benefit. So the key is to start early. And the same principles that work with diabetes are the same principles that work for pre-diabetes, because they are not two different disease states. They are just a spectrum of a single metabolic encompassing disease state that keeps getting worse by the day. So at any point that you recognize you are in a metabolic disease state, whether it's pre-diabetes or very early insulin resistance, or you're just told to be type 2 diabetic, the same principles, whole food plant-based nutrition, staying active, getting good sleep routine, and keeping your stress down would be helpful in treating and eventually potentially reversing it.
The discussion about not being hungry in the morning, I want to bring it back around just for a moment, because one of the reasons why people are often not hungry in the morning is because they eat at night and they eat later. So if you eat a large dinner, there is no way you're going to be hungry in the morning. So you have to be patient and make those changes. But also another very actionable item is related to moving, that physical activity after meals. That is a really amazing window for blood sugar. So if we can get, even if it's a 5-minute, because usually once you're going for 5 minutes, you're going to keep going. But even if it's just 5 minutes after a meal, will absolutely help your body respond to the changes associated with that meal. Every single meal.
So Timaree, the next question is actually on public health. So probably something that you might like to address. Of course, it's open for others as well. So there is so much of clamor and concern about processed food. So why don't we work with the food processors? So that was the question.
And actually, there's a very nice comment. I want to recognize somebody who's in the audience, who is Dr. Sumit Bhagra, who might be related to one of the panelists, actually. And he says, maintaining good health of its citizens is one of the prime duties of any government of that country. Then fast food should be banned, or how do we hold fast food makers responsible? This is Dr. Bhagra's father?
Yes, it is. Yes. So he's responsible for me, and all the kudos and all the blame goes to him.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you for joining, Dad. It's kind of awkward to mix business with family and pleasure or whatever. So anyway, it's a great point. And in a country like America, where free enterprise and capitalism is promoted, it is very hard to rein in. Like, we still sell cigarettes. So if they have not been banned yet, if alcohol cannot be controlled, how do we get to foods and sodas and serving sizes? So it comes down to free enterprise, free business, the need for profit, and people's right to make a choice. Simply by making things not available, sometimes paradoxically makes people want to crave those things more, and there'll be a black market for burgers and shakes. So again, it's understand what we need to do, find ways to implement it. And I think government action, while desirable, is often ridiculed by the people subject to it because it sometimes does not follow the boundaries. It could be overreach, for example.
How about making it super expensive and just taxing the heck out of it rather than subsidizing?
Right. That's definitely, when you think about, I think Twinkies have 22 ingredients that are subsidized by the government. So yes, that's definitely, and it needs to be this multi-prong approach. It's not going to be one answer. So we need to be doing this at many levels, but we also need to empower people with the knowledge behind it. So I would always talk to my students about, what are you actually supporting? So let's just look at this, and you're being taken advantage of, and you can either do that, or you can stand up and say, I am not going to fall prey to that trap. And you can see behind the scenes, what are you doing? You're eating greasy, high sugar food that is going to make you sick and make a lot of people rich. And if we stop buying, they're not going to sell it anymore. So it's a piece there.
So Dr. Vij, I'm just trying to make sure that we address as many questions as possible. The next one is a technical question which talks about the CGM, how to optimize CGM like Libre for controlling blood glucose and keep the glucose within the normal range. So that was a question by Nandini.
So I think it's quite technical, perhaps related to somebody with a diagnosis of diabetes. There are certain types of patients with diabetes on certain types of medications. We're not giving optimal sort of medical advice here. CGMs are available and often used by, they're used by people who do not have diabetes to figure out what's going on. And it can result in things like glucorexia, where you become so attached to every number that comes in every few minutes that your mental health could be affected by just seeing it. Do you need to see it? That's the question. And I think it's outside the scope of the discussion today to talk about CGMs in specific types of diabetes.
Right. So the next question I'll combine. There are two questions by the same person, Sharmishta, and I just combine them. So it basically says, what and how much fruits can we eat when hungry? And feeling hungry very often, is it a symptom of diabetes? So I'm just combining the two questions.
It can be. You have to know more about someone before you can specifically, answer something like that. And if the idea is actual hunger, we talked about that a little bit, or being bored, we have to work on the idea of volume and weight. So if you are eating dried fruits that are missing the water, you can eat a lot of them and not feel that satiety if you're not chewing slowly. I mean, there's so many other factors that there isn't an answer, that it's a certain number of bananas.
These are kind of can be taken nicely in the support group. So maybe we know a little more about you.
Sure.
And that's what the support group is all about. So, Sarmishta, we invite you to join the diabetes support group. So the next question is by Carol. And this says, are the programs that help communities or individuals obtain healthy, natural food when the cost is prohibitive? The single mom can make a box of mac and cheese go further than a vegetable that takes them 3 times as much to buy. So basically the disparity between, unhealthy, cheap food that is prevalent and, struggling for, people with challenged incomes to, cope with more healthier food. So that's basically, so I think the question is, are there any programs for communities and individual? Dr. Vij, Kaiser, or anybody or any of your networks, is there any program that you can recommend?
So Carol, thank you for the question. She works in my hospital. We met this morning and she was, it's probably like 9:30 in Minnesota right now. So thank you for staying on and listening in. She works in the Spanish language department for patients who are non-English speaking and helps them navigate care. And I think the question comes from her vantage point of seeing patients who struggle through these challenges every day. These programs exist on paper and I think are very sort of sparsely available to different parts of the country. There are some new tech startups that talk about plated health or getting food delivered. I think they sound very good in business models, but nothing like that exists on a national basis to help people with food insecurity or to make the dollar go longer. I think the food stamps program does help to some extent. But again, if you have limited resources and you have X number of dollars, you'll probably gravitate towards calories that can feed the whole family as opposed to choosing healthy foods that don't go the whole month for you. So
yeah, I would just add
a better answer. Pankaj, go ahead.
Yeah, it might be more a matter of education, though. I mean, there's this perception that you can go to McDonald's and have, a cheeseburger and fries and feed your kid off the Happy Meal and they're saving money. You're spending gas to drive there. You're probably spending between $6 and $8 to buy them this Happy Meal with the toy and everything. Maybe they did away with the Happy Meal toys. I'm not sure. But if you really think about it, if you educate the person that you could buy a bag of frozen vegetables or pre-chopped salad and you can put together a meal with some cherry tomatoes, throw some nuts in there, maybe make your hummus at home. And you could actually have a really filling, colorful, delicious meal that's going to cost less, taste better, and nourish your body. It's just a matter of, again, we've brainwashed people to believe that the default way to eat is to go eat this non-food, junk food, as we call it, which is inedible substances that we are ingesting and putting in the mouths of our little children. I mean, really, you think about it, she's committing child abuse, but again, she can get away with it because as Sumit said earlier, we have a free society and a commercial system that profits from that.
Other staples like beans and, things like sweet potatoes or fruits like apples, those can last longer and, obviously not have the same cost, to it. So, yeah, partly, yes, there is a definite food desert and food scarcity situation, but also a lack of education and approach and perspective situation going on with that.
I think it also comes down to lack of time, because even if you bought the ingredients, a person who's quickly 30 seconds on the microwave, good to go, 3 kids to, rush out to school, the other components have to be prepared. It takes 5 minutes that people don't have in the morning or in the evening. So again, comes down to social situation and planning ahead, buying in bulk, and perhaps preparing and keeping it ready to go, because quick solutions are generally not the healthiest solutions for people. Timaree?
Absolutely. That's what I teach all day long, is you don't bake one potato. You don't boil one potato, you boil 5 pounds so that you have it at your fingertips. And it's more energy efficient. It just makes sense all the way around. And it's truly a gift from your former self to your future self, because it makes everything work smoother all week long. It makes all the difference. And the education is it. There's so many people that come into my office because this is the low income and struggling participants. And they come in saying, oh, I hate vegetables. I don't eat vegetables. But we don't have enough money. And then I ask them and they go out every weekend to fast food. And so the money is being spent. It's just, they didn't grow up with parents who were cooking. This is this is that loss that we have of family education.
Dr. Vij, now the next question is by Raj Shah, who is also a diabetes health hero, and he also has been helping CWC with support groups. So he has two questions, and I'm just combining them, and I would like him to speak. I've just enabled him to talk, so he can just talk about his two questions and talk a little bit about his story very quickly, because he's the other health hero that we wanted to hear. So 90 seconds, Raj, if you could just combine your questions. It's about successful measures for reversal of diabetes. So over to you, Raj. Yeah.
Hey, Soham, thank you. And nice to see you again, Dr. Vij. Thank you, Dr. Bhagra, Patel, and Kim for putting this together. Hey, I've been following almost all of your guidelines, actually most of them, plus more, for a few years. I'm strictly on plant-based whole food. I do intermittent fasting every day, do full day fasting at least once a month, and prolonged fasting once or twice a year. I'm active, 10K steps, biking, walking extra, focused on improving my sleep and meditation. And the results have been fantastic. And although this is about diabetes, when I did all this, almost everything else also improved. My diabetes went from an A1C of 7.3 to A1C of 5.4, and I'm totally off of medication. My blood pressure was out of control. They kept adding medications. I was taking 7 meds. Now I'm down to only 1. My acid reflux has completely gone away. I have all my allergies have disappeared, and a lot of other things which are minor, like skin rashes, they all disappeared. Okay. So, so this thing works. Everything that you have recommended. And I also run a support group. So, Soham, you can send a link later on to join my support group as well.
Absolutely.
My question is about how do you truly measure reversal of diabetes? Is an A1C measure of less than 5.5 or 5.6 over, let's say, 1 year sufficient? Or do you need to really look at fasting insulin levels and other factors?
So, yeah, I can take that. I mean, there's a technical definition, but as Dr. Patel mentioned, diabetes does not magically appear at an A1C of 6.5. So 6.4 is okay and 6.6 is not okay. There are some other irreversible and reversible changes associated with diabetes on the lipid profile, blood pressure, vascular health. So when diabetes goes away, the glycemic component of diabetes, which is the sugars, went down. But there may be other things set in motion by having had diabetes many years ago, such as atherosclerosis, blockages of your arteries, etc., that may still take a toll down the road. So I think it's important not to congratulate yourself so hard that, I finally beat it, that some of those habits that, had been inculcated sort of fall behind the wayside. So always be on the lookout, because ultimately as time goes on and the body ages and the pancreatic reserve diminishes, it may come back. But technically speaking, if you have not taken medications, your A1C is below 5.7% for 6 or 12 months, you can consider it gone for now. It generally comes back in 5, 10, 15, 20 years with time. Soham?
Another way to look at it in a lab aspect. So fasting insulin, yes, fasting insulin less than 5 with the glucose in the 80s is a good range to be in if you're off of medications. Then you have an A1C less than 5.6. But one way to stress your system and also see if it doesn't respond like a diabetic is to go through oral glucose tolerance test, where you drink this 75 grams of sugary liquid, and then your glucose and insulin levels are checked every hour or 30 minutes, depending on the protocol. And if you respond like a normal person in that situation, then that would, at least in terms of the glycemic effects of diabetes, that you have reversed it. Yes, you have to watch out for any, other vascular effects that could be coming up down the line. But the same changes that you did that help you reverse your insulin resistance, also will have a bearing on your cardiovascular health, as we have seen from Dean Ornish studies or Dr. Elsenstein studies. So yes, don't let your guard down, and don't congratulate yourself either. But at the same time, I think recognizing the changes you have done and keeping on doing them in a sustained manner.
Need to remember that the A1C is an average. So that means that you can have highs and lows, and those are not going to be reflected in that A1C, just to put it out there.
How much the diet plays a role versus consistent fitness routine? I know both are important, but how each of these two factors play a role in getting or not getting type 2 diabetes?
Food is more important than in terms of impact. If you're looking at factors, at least from my aspect, you cannot outrun a bad diet. So activity is great, exercise is great, and do it by all means. It has tremendous benefits. But if you're not focusing on the right foods, no matter how much you exercise, you're not going to get the results.
And you can out-eat a good exercise regimen. So that's the converse. So absolutely.
This is an interesting question. The root of most problem is inflammation, and chronic inflammation. The person said. So, could you please share ideas and suggestions for alternative medicine in case of you have chronic inflammation?
We trained in the system of modern medicine, or American medicine or allopathic medicine, whatever you want to call it. And it's hard for us to give any advice about alternative medicine per se here. I would say that food, and bad foods in particular, are pro-inflammatory, and they trigger that cycle. And by eating better, you can perhaps modulate your inflammation inside the body. Again, if you're looking for some chemical or heavy metal or other types of chemicals to fix what's caused by lifestyle, you're looking in the wrong places.
And what I would add is the most potent aspect that can really lower your chronic inflammation is working on your sleep quality. If you can fix your sleep hygiene and sleep quality and get deep, relaxing sleep, and always quality matters more than the quantity, and time of onset of sleep matters more than just the hours of sleep. If you can fix your sleep, you will be working your way down, lowering inflammation, in addition to food and all the other things. But sleep is a huge factor that you can definitely work on.
And a very actionable piece for sleep is to make sure you're getting sunlight in the morning within the first 30 minutes of waking to set your circadian rhythm so that the melatonin production in the evening follows. So your sleep begins in the morning to help you sleep that night. So it's a full system. I really think that all of us have talked about the holistic, all of these pieces need to be working together because the stress impacts sleep, the eating late impacts restful sleep, the lack of physical activity impacts restful sleep. And if you haven't seen the research, sleep seems to be the foundation, maybe even more important than food, which is very difficult to even say as a registered dietitian, but to recognize that piece is very undervalued. And we're just starting to see it a little bit. It's actually been something that people have said, if you're sleeping, then it's a waste of time. And that you'll hear someone say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I need to be productive. But that actually is undermining quality of our lives and productivity.
So the next three questions I'm combining because they're related to food and diet. So the first one comes from nutritionist Erica. She says, can you please repeat the 4-5 S's of nutrition advice?
So snacks, sweets, servings, seconds, social connections, and you can build another like 10 of those. S is a really easy word to make mnemonics with.
And you said slower, eat slower as well.
Eat slower too, yes.
So the other related questions to food is how can one have a balanced meal if one is a vegetarian?
Legumes, vegetables, whole, intact grains, fruit, seeds, and nuts. And we need to have that where at least half the plate is vegetable. And then we can have the higher, more densely carbohydrate-rich vegetables and have legumes part of every single meal. Every meal that I have has legumes. We want color. There's lots of different pieces to making wonderful meals that love you back.
Okay, so Dr. Raj Gupta has a question. What is the postprandial blood sugar if you have continuous monitoring by Libre? Do you recommend any exercise after food intake to counter high spikes?
So studies have shown even climbing stairs up and down, 2 flights, 10 steps, 15 steps, walking 5 minutes. Majority of the meal when consumed is burnt by the muscle. Muscle is the biggest organ in the body that burns your glucose. And if you activate your muscle, some people say if you exercise too much at 9 or 10 p.m., running an hour and a half, it might take your sleep quality down a little bit because you're so awake and alert at the wrong time of the day. But any activity after a meal, especially in the evening, will help you digest your food better. And some people say if you've gone out and had dessert and, had a bit too much to eat, that might be the day to burn the extra calories so you don't go to bed with the extra guilt of having had too many calories that day. Timaree, anything else to add there?
No, that research is very solid that within 30 minutes of that meal getting out, and if you really want to straddle the entire blood glucose spike, you'd exercise for 60 to 90 minutes. I know that's a lot, but if it's very, very powerful, but anything counts. And that's why I had even mentioned it earlier, just for 5 minutes, just get out moving. And even if it's not out, just moving makes a significant difference instead of sitting on the couch. And part of that is when you overeat and you can't move, you don't feel like your food should energize you, not put you to sleep.
So in line with sustainability in our modern lifestyle, what I suggest is get a stationary bike and put it in your living room. And so after dinner, after 15, 20 minutes of dinner, turn on your TV so you get to watch your TV and get on your bike and bike for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever long you like. So you entertain yourself, exercise at the same time. Even if the weather is bad outside, you can still do it in your indoors. Yes, you can go out and walk and get fresh air and all that. But if you want to make everything fit in a small time area, then do a bike ride, stationary bike after your meal watching TV.
I would just add, if social media was connected to an exercise bike and you could not browse Facebook or any other thing, unless you were pedaling, I think the problems could be solved here. People spend, 2-3 hours a day. If you just connect it mechanically, an app that says, thou shall not browse social media unless you're active, I think that's our solution right here.
We'll combine few of them and then we'll wrap up the question. There's another one on steroids, so I just want to take it up. Do steroid medications contribute to increase in blood sugar level? If so, does the blood sugar level come down by itself after some time, or does it have to be controlled with food intake?
So for most people, sugars go up. I've had patients who take steroids, their sugars do not go up. They probably are genetically gifted and do not have the steroid response inside their body. As a general rule, steroids, prednisone, and other medications will make the sugars go up. If you're on it for a short period of time, when you stop it, the numbers will gradually come down. But if steroids cause weight gain with it and you've taken it for 6 months or 12 months, it is possible that diabetes may or may not go away after long-term use.
The question is, it's from Stacy. It says, will increasing one's water intake help with satiety, or especially if there is a consumption of thicker viscosity of water? If so, how can we naturally thicken our water's viscosity? So
I'll take this one real quickly. We don't want to be thickening our water. Don't worry about that. That's actually, if you have dysphagia, if you've had a stroke, that is something that we have to be very concerned about to avoid issues with aspiration. However, the research is very clear that the water needs to be in the cell walls. So the food needs to be intact. For instance, if you can't eat dried fruit and then drink water and assume that you're going to have the same response as if you ate the fruit before it was dried with the water inside the cells. So we really want that water to be intact and the cells to be intact. So yes, just eating foods that are naturally rich in water, which happen to be fruits and vegetables. And when you do consume grains or the fruits and vegetables like the sweet potatoes, cooking them with moist cooking methods, we didn't even get into advanced glycation end products and other compounds that are created when we attach heat to protein and sugar molecules. But water-rich, water source for cooking, and don't worry about thickening your water.
I think Dr. Vij will take the last question and then wrap up. And of course, we profusely thank all the panelists. But just let me combine them. So first one is, what is a fruit, one or two fruits that a diabetic can eat safely without guilt? And there's a lot of talk about this turmeric and curcumin. So is that, do they really help for a diabetes? So that's the last question. And we'll invite everybody to, write to us, events@mycwc.org. Any questions, joining support group will certainly not disappoint you. So that's the last question. So,
and download the app. We have an app as well. So Khushi, KHUSHI.
I'll take the turmeric part of the question, and then I think Timaree can answer the first part of the question. But so turmeric, can take it from, and Sumit is also of Indian origin. So turmeric is part of cuisine, and it's used as a spice in your food. So yes, it has an anti-inflammatory benefit, anti-cancer benefit, and a lot of different studies have been done on it. But eating it as a supplement versus eating it as a spice is two different things, because you need the whole spice that has all the polyphenols and nutrients that the whole root offers, and not just curcumin, which is one of the many active ingredients of turmeric. So yes, turmeric is beneficial, but again, in line with what we discussed before, just a singular component without addressing the basics of food is not going to give you the wholesome benefits. So yes, turmeric has benefits, but combine it with the right foods.
And turmeric needs to be combined with black pepper. And so the turmeric root, just as an easy take home, can be purchased and scrubbed and then put right in the freezer with the skin. And then you can take it out of the freezer without thawing it and use a microplane and grate it into salads, foods that you'd like to consume. That way you're using the whole food in its entirety. And the question about fruit, I don't even want to hear the idea of guilt. Guilt and food that's just setting us up again for trying to get away with something where your body's never not watching. So we want to make choices, and fruit is not a bad food. That has been, a lot of press has been around that as, oh, fruits just turn into sugar. We want whole foods. If you want the most antioxidant rich fruits, and that's just the research we've done so far, we may come up with other amazing benefits of other fruits, but berries come out very high on the antioxidant list, but apples are fabulous, and not peeling them, but scrubbing them. That could be a whole seminar in and of itself.
And I'll just end with the fact that everybody's looking for a single solution, because marketing gimmicks have made us into really tools that we're looking for one thing that will fix us all. It's like asking, should I walk with my right foot or my left foot? I mean, I think it's both. It's everything. Mm-hmm. It's whole foods. So we cannot distill down good dietary practices and good lifestyle practices into one bullet point or 5 bullet points. It's really a lifestyle. It's almost a philosophy. And yet, when the more you know, the less you actually know. When you talk to people who are trained in the field, they'll give you answers like, we don't know really. What they're saying is not that we don't know. It's just that the data is not sufficient for us to make a statement. And yet the marketers and people who are trying to sell things, or, the so-called, I don't know, use the word quacks here, they will make these claims, they'll be emphatic, and they'll be, have charisma, etc. And people fall for that, and they start believing in people who make these claims with very unambiguous certainty. Everything we know changes with time. Research takes time. What we know today might change. And generally, the answers are not in one single ingredient type solutions. It is really a lifestyle change. So thank you.
Beautiful. Well, very well said. Everyone, thank you for your time, sharing your wisdom. And really, I know I learned a lot. I have a lot more questions for you. We could go for another 2 hours, but I want to be very respectful and profusely grateful for your generosity in spending this time with us. This is purely to educate the public and spread the message of health and wellness. And you are our megaphone, so we can spread that message loud all over the country, all over the world. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to our team in the back, Som, Sachin, Soumya, everyone. And we wish you health and wellness.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.